So, hello and welcome. My name's Steve Nobel, and today I'm speaking with Maryam Hasnaa on the journey of the highly sensitive. Miriam was raised by two parents who are spiritual teachers, and she's really been immersed in a world of mysticism, ceremony, celebration since before she was born. She is an initiated priestess, and she uses her etheric abilities to remind others of the vibrational and energetic nature of this universe. Her work includes a depth of knowledge and experience within a diverse range of esoteric spiritual traditions, cosmic cosmology, and energy work. And Miriam specializes in ascension guidance as well as helping other beings honor their soul's blueprint within the divine plan. And she runs a New Earth Mystery School. Her website is myriamhasnaa.com, and there'll be a link going out with this podcast. Hi, Miriam.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me with you today.
Oh, I always love talking with you. We just seem to talk for hours when we're just chatting, but here we go. We're talking about the journey of the highly sensitive. And from your bio and from knowing you, it seems that you've had a journey as a highly sensitive. Can you say something about that journey?
Yeah, I've had a journey as a highly sensitive, and I wasn't aware that that was the journey I was on until I actually realized that I had a highly sensitive child. So my son, who's a teenager now, when he was 2 years old, he still wasn't speaking. So I had a background in early childhood development, so I knew that that was a benchmark that he had missed. So I wanted to have him tested to see if I thought he might have been autistic, because some of the markers and the way that he was, very sensitive to sound, very sensitive to touch, very sensitive to temperature, even sensitive to people's energy. And also he was just very in his own world. So there were a couple of things that I just felt that I wanted to explore a little bit more. And when I had him tested, they said he's very cognitively advanced and he doesn't want to talk.
Oh, okay.
But what they said is, but he must be having all of his needs really met because he's not even feeling the need to speak. And I didn't realize at the time, but we were communicating telepathically very clearly. And obviously wanted to start encouraging him to speak. So we went through a process of requiring him to, even if I knew what he wanted, just having him use his words so he could start to communicate. And then what happened is really quickly when he learned how to communicate, he started sharing all of these really profound things. And then when he was around 4 years old, he told me the story of how he picked me to be his mother.
Oh, wow.
And he told me things about the circumstances of when he found me that were things that a child wouldn't know, that other people wouldn't know. So at that time, that was a big part of my awakening, but it also really coincided with just me starting to have my extrasensory gifts start to come online. And I realized that there are many layers and dimensions of high sensitivity. Some of those markers are things that in our current society you can be tested. So for example, a lot of highly sensitive people might have what they call sensory processing sensitivity, and that's something that you can be assessed and tested for. But there are other things that, again, our current society won't be able to test for, right? So I realized that I was a child who was highly sensitive and extrasensory, and that I wasn't in the environment where that was supported, where it was encouraged. I remember being a child that knew things, was tuned into things. I remember having, imaginary friends, talking to, different beings. And I just remember that whenever other people around me would become aware of things that I was doing, it was always perceived as inappropriate or weird or not something that I wanted to continue to do. So, it's normal, I think, from the mind of a child to turn certain things off and just suppress certain things just from the need for, those attachment needs. We suppress certain things that are authentic to who we are. Just to, have approval, just to make sure that we survive, just to make sure that our caregivers that were, pleasing to our caregivers, right? From the mind of a child. That's how it works. So as I started to realize that I really wanted to support my child with knowing that his unique way of, his unique brain, his unique nervous system, his unique way of experiencing the world was a gift, I simultaneously was able to also support my inner child with saying, it's okay. We're going to bring these gifts online. We're going to start to work with them. We're going to start to remember who we are, why we're here, what our divine, intentions are in this lifetime. And yeah, so it all was really, a beautiful process, definitely challenging because I had to confront, those same fears of what are people going to think if I, come out of the closet as a channel or, all that kind of stuff. So that was my journey. And what I also found is that people were really magnetized to me that had similar experiences. So I think also, aside from really wanting to advocate for my own child, I really wanted to advocate for other people who were sensitive. Yeah. So that really kind of is what inspired me to start to share more about my experiences.
And your work is beautiful and needed in the world, and your wisdom is needed because you have a great depth of experience and wisdom. I find, which in this arena we're in. I think there's a lot of people that where it can be quite superficial and it can be love and light, but that it lacks the depth sometimes. But I find that you have a great depth, Miriam. So that's why I love talking with you.
Yeah, we've had great conversations.
Yeah, I should come over there and hang out in your garden, I think, and have tea with you sometime.
Definitely.
Can I ask you, because what I've found, and I'm sure you've also been talking about this, sensitivity is a two-sided gift. There's your son with all these gifts and his unique nervous system, and it's not really appreciated by those around, and also the fact of being too sensitive, especially when there's a lot of dense energies around. What about this double-edged sword aspect of the highly sensitive person?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I've found that there's just a couple of things that I think are pretty key that play a big factor in how you experience the world as a sensitive. I find that a lot of sensitives have a lifestyle that does not align with what we need as sensitives. And again, check in and see with your own intuition and see if it resonates. But for me, I know I needed to be surrounded by a lot of nature. I know that I needed to have a lifestyle that allowed me to really listen into my body and feel what I needed. Because of that high sensitivity, what happens is that we process more information in any experience than other people that have a different type of brain. So we're picking up on really subtle things, and it's all information. So we're processing all of that information. So we need time to let our nervous system rest and let our brains rest, and to take in everything that we experience in a way that doesn't overwhelm us, but that we can actually use it to our benefit. What they have found in the research around high sensitivity is that highly sensitive people thrive better in positive environments, and they also suffer more in what the negative environments. We'll say negative environments, right? And whatever that means for you. But for me, that means fast moving city, noise, especially the sounds of beeping cars and yelling and harsh noises. Right. Smells, chemical smells. I get migraines really easily. Food. I'm really sensitive to food. I'm sensitive to what I put on my skin. Again, this is not even getting into the more subtle realm types of sensitivity, right? Not even talking about energy yet. It's just even those five senses, right? We're more sensitive to sound, to temperature, all of that. So people always ask me, why did I move to California? And when I tell them I moved here for the sun, they think it's a joke, but it's actually the truth, because I know for me what my body was asking for is to be in an environment that allows me to thrive. Now, at the same time, I always say being sensitive doesn't mean running away from life. So while I need my sanctuary, right, my what I call my home sanctuary, the hummingbird sanctuary, we call it where I live, the hummingbird house. While I need this to be sort of like the main place that I resource into and like I'm able to attune into and to reset, and I come home here because, you know, your home is an extension of your energy field. While I absolutely need this to be, you know, my home environment, my home frequency, I also can go into cities. I can, you know, I have events, I do retreats, you know, I travel all over the world. I have learned how to travel really skillfully. I have also had experiences where I've flown overseas somewhere and I've stayed in an Airbnb and there has been a smell there that I knew that I would not be able to tolerate, and I've left. And what I've found is that even people that think or feel or know that they're sensitive, when they meet me, they're like, I'm so not used to someone being more sensitive than me. And I give myself permission to be sensitive. And what that means is, like I said, is I will leave. I will leave an Airbnb, even if that means I have to find another place to stay. You know, for some people that might seem extravagant, but again, like I said, for me, I've set my lifestyle up. I've set the way that I care for myself up. I'm an instrument, right? If I'm going somewhere to do an event and I'm not able to be in tune with myself, I can't do my work, you know? So I can't, so for me, it's not a luxury. It's just a baseline need that I have to be able to be myself.
Well, I'm really curious because before I want to talk about energy, but before that, when you say travel skillfully, because this is something I'm still working out, you know, how do I travel skillfully? And do you have any hot tips around traveling skillfully for sensitive people?
Absolutely. So eye mask. So for sure an eye mask that's going to block out all light. A playlist of the sound frequencies that work for you, or I will put on an 8-hour, you know, sound frequency or guided meditation or nature sounds, or even like a hypnosis. You know, for me, when I travel, I use that time for timeline jumping. I use that time for dream work, you know. So even though I'm, you know, traveling on a, you know, airplane or train or whatever, you know, I drop in and I go into like my sensory deprivation, you know, my own self-created sensory deprivation sort of tank. I also, food for me, I bring my own food. I have obviously a lot of food sensitivities, so I don't trust the airline to have the food that I need. I bring what I need. And I also have, and again, people, this might be like, wow, this is a lot, but I've developed this over time. I always travel with a medicine bag. That medicine bag has, you know, say like emergency tools, right, that I need in it. Mostly flower essences, tinctures, aromatherapy, different, you know, touch things, right? Some people call them fidgets, you know, different things that I can, if I kind of have the excess energy that I need to do something with, nervous energy, and I need to, you know, move my fingers a lot. So, and I also will, another thing I'll do is I'll wait to listen to an audiobook that I'm really excited about, because, and I'll pick the one, I'm like, oh, this is the one. And I'll just listen to the audiobook the whole trip.
That's so cool. That's a great set of tips.
And the other last one, and I've done this many, many times, is that I try, obviously now it's a different situation, but a lot of times when I travel, I try to locate where I can go into some sort of spa retreat environment, whether it's like, you know, a big thing here that we have is sort of like bathhouses, where they have hot tubs and saunas. Oh, yeah. So I will steam and water, you know, bathe, water purification off sort of whatever the travel was, and just do a hard reset.
Brilliant. You're a virtual encyclopedia of tips and wisdom, Miriam. Goodness. Well,
I mean, I can only like say, because I've done trial and error, and I've had it really not go well, and I've gone to events with not feeling great.
Yeah.
So I just made a commitment to do it really well.
Yeah, I'm going to be re-listening to this part of it because I need to do that because I travel a bit. So Miriam, let me ask you about energy, because let's come on to energy, the sensitivity to other people's emotional energy or even mental energy. What about that?
Yeah, I mean, a big thing for me that I teach about is energetic boundaries. I think that my experience in training and mentoring sensitives now at this point for quite some time is that for many people, there's a misunderstanding of what is happening in the subtle body. Oftentimes when we think that we are, helping people, when we think that we're showing up for people, what's actually happening is enmeshment. It's allowing other people's energy into our energy field. It is not having clear boundaries and thinking that the best way to be able to support people is to merge with them, and what I call the empath hug, which is like, you have a conversation and the person leaves feeling better and you leave feeling worse, right? All of that stuff. I think that there is a misunderstanding of what true empathy is and what true compassion is. And I think we're relearning on a subtle body level, on a nervous system level, what it actually means to show up and support people. And this is really subtle work that I love talking about. But I know for me, I'm always best able to support people when their energy is not in my energy field. So I'm really clear about that. I talk a lot online about what I call being a retired empath. And that idea, that concept was something that I created for my subconscious. I really wanted to get my subconscious on board with like what we were going to be doing. And there was a lot of attraction, a lot of lure in this idea of being an empath, right? Especially from having this like disempowered part of my journey where people didn't understand me, and I was kind of so different and people just didn't get it, and I'm an empath. And then at some point it just didn't resonate with me anymore. It didn't feel empowering. It didn't feel exciting for me. And I knew that my abilities weren't going to turn off. I wasn't going to turn them off. That wasn't where I was. I wasn't trying to avoid my gifts. I wasn't trying to run away from them. I just knew that it needed refinement. And I realized that a lot of what I associated with the story of being an empath really had more to do with my attachment trauma, with my attachment dysregulation, with not understanding what it meant to be sovereign, and not understanding what it really meant to be like self-differentiated and have my own experience. So other people can come into contact with me. They're allowed to be choosing and having and creating the experience they're having, and I'm allowed to have the experience that I'm having. And that's okay. And that's not lacking empathy. It's not lacking compassion. It just means I get to have my experience. You get to have your experience. I'm not going to take on your experience. And from that place, I actually have something to offer you, right? Not from a place of like where I am is better or anything like that. But I actually have the opportunity on a nervous system level, from nervous system to nervous system, instead of you entraining me to where your nervous system is, which might be fight or flight, it might be threat detection, it might be defensive stance. I have the opportunity to allow you to attune to my nervous system, which is regulated, I'm centered, I'm grounded, I know who I am, I'm in my power, and I'm sovereign.
Great. It's really an amazing, fascinating area. this area of attachment, trauma, boundaries, and sensitivity, because I don't hear many people talking about it. So can you say something about, I guess the creation of attachment, trauma, and how it affects us?
Whew, yes. Topics I love to talk about so much. So what happens with attachment trauma, and it's very, very common, it's not, and we could get into even a whole conversation around like, what is trauma, right? I don't really like to define trauma for people because different people can have experiences that, they might hear one person's trauma and be like, oh, well, my experience isn't that bad, so maybe it wasn't traumatic, right? For me, what I consider to be trauma is when you have an experience that your system feels overwhelmed and you don't have enough capacity, bandwidth, energy, resilience to meet that experience skillfully, right? So your whole energy field collapses. You might spin out emotionally, right? All of that. And so we all know that on some level or not, just being human, right? There's a lot of trauma that comes with being in a body. And it doesn't mean that your parents didn't love you. It doesn't mean that they didn't care, they weren't there. But attachment trauma comes from not having a consistently attuned caregiver. When you are a child, you're learning what they call co-regulation. So you're learning, I get upset and then I can sort of down-regulate my nervous system and everything's okay, right? Because the parent, you cry out and the mother responds and you realize, oh, when I cry out, I'm soothed and I'm able to attune to a caregiver who is regulated. So if you have a parent who is stressed, who is chronically stressed, which many of us did, or if you had a parent that wasn't consistently attuned, that means sometimes they responded to your needs immediately in your cries, your cry outs, right? And other times they did not, right? For whatever reason. That creates this attachment dysregulation, right? And so that goes into our templates of our nervous system of how we relate to other people and how we relate to the world. So if we're running a template that says, when I cry out, other people respond, my needs are met, that's completely different from if you have a nervous system and the template essentially says, when I cry out, no one cares, or I can't trust people, right? And again, this is on the nervous system level. It's not even on the level of your conscious awareness, right? And so that's what happens. And because of that, we go into these different playing out of the same experience, the same dynamic that we experienced in childhood in other relationships, right? Sometimes they call this attachment style. So there's like these, nervous, it's more nervous, avoidant attachment style, right? All these kind of these frameworks, right? But just on a really basic level, it really is about what's running in your nervous system. So what we know now is that we can start to entrain our nervous system. We can rewire our brain through, neuroplasticity, and we can experience a different relationship with stress, a different relationship with when things don't go our way, right? When we wanted someone to do something and they didn't do it, or the things that remind us of past experiences that would put us back in that fight or flight. Maybe, let's say, the example I like to give is we text someone and they don't text back and we go into high alert. What we can learn now is to actually say, am I safe? Is this a situation where I need to fight or flee? Or am I actually safe? And then we can install these different internal resources to just come back into balance, to self-regulate. And then over time, we start running different templates. So what I have found is that one of the not as common talked about stress response is the fawn. So we hear fight, fight, flee, and then there's fawn. So fawn is people pleasing. So when you change who you are to make other people, like you, to make other people stick around, it's a way to create safety from this attachment dysregulation template. A lot of what being an empath is actually a trauma response. It's that people pleasing. And what it means is what they've found is that when people have attachment trauma, they actually have a really hard time attuning to other people. So many times when we think we're empathing, we're actually not even attuned to what the other person needs. We think we are, but in actuality, we're changing ourselves to be more liked by someone that we're not even accurately aware of what that person needs, wants, or desires. So it's a pretty messy soup.
Yeah.
Pretty messy soup. And I could say a lot more, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, wow. I mean, you've covered it beautifully. But can I ask you, from a point of someone says to you, "Yeah, I recognize this. What can I do about it?"
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of great research right now about the nervous system. It's one of my favorite things to start to talk about. Polyvagal theory is one of those things that sort of like many people have been finding is like connecting a lot of the dots that we've been looking for, right? And one of the concepts in polyvagal theory is this idea of neuroception. It's this idea that the nervous system is always sort of like scanning the environment and picking up on things. Now, if you're a highly sensitive, that is exponentially happening. So your nervous system is constantly picking up on things. And again, if the template that you're running is threat, 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 I need to be hyper vigilant. I need to look out for threat. And again, one of the kind of common, I can say templates, but I also feel that there's that sort of a soul agreement component to it as well. You hear about, the empath and the narcissist. Right, so it's perfectly set up on its energetic dynamic level that your neuroception can get miswired. So what that means is that things that are actually harmful, your system reads them as safe. Things that are actually safe, your system reads them as harmful. So you might get triggered by someone actually coming to you with care and compassion, right? Your system might not be able to receive that sort of love. So getting really clear on your relationship template, your attachment style is a really big one. What I love about the more recent work and sort of like trauma integration work, you don't really have to know what you experience. This isn't therapy. Right. Although if therapy works for people, that's great. If talk therapy is something that people benefit from, I personally feel that the systems that have more to do with integration and that have more to do with sort of somatic learning, right? So that means becoming very, very clear of what is happening on a body level, what is happening on a nervous system level, and that means tracking sensations. Right. So that means, again, going back to that first example, someone didn't text me back. Oh, wow. I noticed my chest is getting really tight. I noticed that my breathing is really shallow. Right. And so really starting to track those sensations and then shifting on a somatic level what you're experiencing to start to down regulate. Right. So that might mean just noticing the breath. Right. Grounding in your body, giving yourself a foot massage, eating something, smelling something, using a flower essence, which is one of my favorite things, and we can talk about that more as well. But once you have noticed what's happening on a body level, so you're not disassociating, you're not suppressing, you're noticing, you're tracking the sensations on a body level, not from mind. You're not going into a mental loop of well, this happened and maybe this and maybe it means that. It's all on the body level. So it's all about embodiment and learning your unique, right, system of like, what's happening in my body right now? And then asking, what do I need? You know, it's really continually coming back to that question over and over again, right? If you're able to connect it into an experience from early childhood, because oftentimes when you start noticing the body sensations, it will, right? Because triggers are time travel machines. We're going back into an earlier experience where we felt this same way. So if those memories come, that's fine. But also asking, what did I need in that moment? You know, what did I need and can I give it to myself, right? I needed to feel safe. What can I give myself right now that can create safety? I might give myself a hug, you know? So it's really beautiful work. And everyone having their own sort of like toolkit of like, okay, I'm in that, you know, stress response. And again, not necessarily going into the mental, staying embodied, and that means tracking sensations. And sometimes you might have a trigger from a sound, right? You might hear a train, and that trigger from hearing that train takes you back to a memory in childhood where a trauma happened and there was a train in the background. Right? And it doesn't have anything to do with the train. It's just the way that our brain encodes memory. And saying, what did I need? You know, what did I need? And can I give that to myself? And then giving that to yourself. And if you do that over and over and over again, like I said, what happens is that you depotentiate the charge. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the charge in the body, which is the emotional charge, as opposed to going into talk therapy, which is a different way of doing the work. But again, I found that the embodiment piece is what has helped me the most.
Beautiful. Now, you've mentioned flowers, and I know we talked before the interview about your garden and your love of flowers and flower essences. I mean, I use Bach flower remedies a lot here and other ones from the British Isles mostly. I know you create them. Can you say something about some of the flowers that can help with these kind of issues you've talked about?
Yeah, so why I love flower essences is because flower essences sort of takes all of this stuff, which all of this work is still kind of, even though it's new in the mainstream, still kind of keeping it on the sort of mainstream, you know, level. It's related to like the latest in science. When we start going into flower essences, now we're talking about the soul. So what flower essences do is they help create that bridge between the personality and the soul. So let's say that this on a personality level, you're running this narrative of I'm an empath, right? But on a soul level, your soul is up to something different, which is what my experience was, right? Thankfully, I got that cosmic wake-up call and I was able to hear the guidance and I was able to sort of like playfully, you know, let that part of my personality mature and grow and evolve. But flower essences, what they do is they create that bridge, right, between what the personality is up to and what the soul is up to. Why I love them is because they're just such clear tuning forks, and because they're subtle and they're vibrational, they work on the etheric. So for me, I've found a lot of times that people that have that, you know, that narrative of being an empath, they have a lot of holes in their auric field. They have a lot of attachments, cords, unhealthy cords, a lot of relationships that are extractive. And a lot of times they don't know what it even feels like to just have their own field be completely filled with themselves, right? So I talk about sometimes being full of yourself, right? We always think that's a bad thing, but it's like, I'm full of me.
Yeah.
as opposed to someone else, my parents or my partner, or, whatever else, right? And so flower essences can really help with that refinement and that subtle attunement. And they're also, I find them to be very quick, very immediate, in how we work with them. But because they're archetypes, we can, what they talk about in the Bach flower remedy work is, and then really all flower remedy work, is that we also have these sort of like core personality archetypes that we sort of come in here with, right? Astrology talks about that. Tarot talks about that. But flower essence is another system that speaks to archetypes. So, for example, yarrow, yeah, right? And there's many different yarrows. There's pink yarrow, yellow yarrow, but yarrow is for boundaries. It's for energetic boundaries.
All right.
Right. So all of the yarrows I find are super helpful for people who are learning that. Another one is centauri, right?
Yeah.
If you actually look, because I've done some trainings with people where you can look at Kirlian photography of flower essences. When you look at the actual aura of centauri, it doesn't have any boundaries. It literally just kind of disperses out and flows out. So it's here literally to teach us about how to say no, how to have those boundaries, right? So it's another really great one. Bleeding heart is another one I love. The name is, is self-evident. There's actually a whole category of flower essences. Oh, I call it minding your business flower essences, but it's really about over care for others, right? And again, people might think, whoa, there's a whole category for that, because there's so many different versions of over caring for others, right? There's that person who constantly has a cause, right? They constantly have a new cause and they need everyone else to get involved in that cause. And they're really pushy about it, and they're really assertive, and it's not helpful, right? But they think they're helping. They think it's a type of caring. It's a type of not having good boundaries, right? And not respecting where other people are. I often have, we have a class in my school, I talk about the healed healer, and I talk about the shadow side of being a healer, which is very closely related to, the kind of retired empath framework. And a lot of times people get into healing from a place of codependency, right? They're like, well, first I was an empath, now I'm a healer, but they haven't actually dealt with the misalignment of the personality and the soul, and what the soul actually wants to do, and sort of the personality or the ego's idea of what it is and what it looks like. And it's like, oh, I'm going to save all these people, I'm helping all these people, and then when the people don't want the help, what happens? Poor me, I'm the victim, right? It's textbook.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like the flower essences, and again, we know this because we've been doing this for a while, and we've seen it. We've just seen it. We've seen it many, many times, so we can spot it, even in ourselves. I say all this because I was this person all the way. Yeah. But for a lot of people, this is still very subtle. It's like, wow, I never even considered that there are people who get into healing from a place of trying to fill those gaps in their own field. And then there's people that want to play like that, because again, what they're up to on a personality level is that they're looking for someone to give their power away to. So they're like, great, a healer that I can, a spiritual teacher or a healer that I can give my power away to. Great, this fits my template, my attachment trauma template.
Right. Yes. Right? Amazing.
So the flower essences is really the medicine that can help us just kind of like heal those gaps, really start to like clean up those subtle places where we're like, I've just done so much work, but there's still something that's off.
Yeah.
Something not quite right. It's flower essence.
I need to come and hang out in your garden, I think. Well, can you just say something about what you offer? I mean, you got a beautiful website, which I'll put a link to. What are you offering the world at the moment, Miriam?
Yeah, so New Earth Mystery School is a community, a beautiful community of people that want to grow and learn together. And so we have classes every month, and we have a lot of great offerings in the community. We have like Qigong and dance, community meetings. So you were the guest this month. Actually, we were talking about using the Akashic records to access your multidimensional gifts. So we talk about all of that stuff. And we definitely talk about it in a really unique way, because I do think that my work is what some people might call radical, but it's just, I think, the way that, because I've been immersed in a lot of this stuff since childhood, and I've seen a lot of the shadow, and I really just love, integrating those shadow aspects. I really love it. I really love just being on the nose, saying the thing exactly from a loving place, but we're going to really do it. We're not going to, dance around it. We're going to go there.
Yeah.
And so for people that really want that type of, a lot of my students call me the sword. I just cut through the heart of it. I cut through the BS. I just cut to the heart of it. And I just say, look, this is what it is. Yeah, so we have our school. I also have apothecary, residence apothecary.
Yeah.
So those are the main things I offer, and everything is up on my website. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do recommend go check her out. She's a rare gem in this field. We'll have to do this again sometime. It's a brilliant subject, Journey of the Sensitive Person. You obviously know the terrain very well, and I'm sure we'll be speaking again. So thanks very much, Miriam. It's lovely talking with you.
So lovely speaking with you, always.